Joining us now is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, Carrie Schochet. It's a recruiting agency that places management, executives, and C-level roles in finance and accounting, as well as working in operations, human resources, sales, and marketing. Carrie, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start with, you have a really interesting name for your business, Purple Squirrel Advisors. Tell us about the origin story behind that name.
Sure. So Purple Squirrel is a recruiting industry term referring to the unicorn or the elusive perfect candidate. And so it's widely used by recruiters. I've been using it, that term for many years. I was with a global recruiting firm in Chicago for about 10 years and moved back to Detroit in late 2012. When I moved back, I realized it would be very hard, and I decided to leave the global firm and really start my entrepreneurial journey at that time. I realized it would be hard to compete with the national firms for kind of those premium searches or those kind of easier ones. And so out of the gates, I decided that I would kind of go purple squirrel hunting. So looking for the more traditional purple squirrels, which are highly technical roles. They're in rural markets. There's something that makes them challenging. And so that's what I did for my first couple of years in Michigan, and then came to believe that every search is the search for a purple squirrel if you're really trying to get it right, and get those things that you can't see on paper that make for a good fit. And so that's how we just define the purple squirrel today.
So when you're working with companies in their hiring processes or as they're looking to reorganize their management, what are some of the ways that your company, that Purple Squirrel Advisors, is working with these companies? Are you working more with the executives, more with the HR departments, a little bit of both?
Yeah, it really depends on kind of the business itself and what their management team structure is. Oftentimes, we're working with owners and CEOs. If they have an HR department, we certainly collaborate with them as well. And so it just varies company to company. Most of our clients are small to mid-sized businesses. And so, their structures vary. But, we help them with everything. Really, it's not just candidates we bring, it's process as well. And, and oftentimes our clients don't have fully scoped out job descriptions. And so we'll help them to, scope the roles, write those position specifications, and just bring different things to their attention even before we get started on the actual recruiting. And then, of course, we guide them through the recruiting process as well.
We're joined by Carrie Schochet. She is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, joining us today on the MegaCast. And so we've seen over the past year or so, as things have started to reopen, this quote-unquote worker shortage that's been affecting businesses that are looking to reacclimate their workforce to life as we currently know it. We're looking to bring some employees back off of their leave, off of their furloughs, or just hire more people. How has that affected your role and your company's role in recruiting some of these employees and helping these businesses find those perfect candidates to fill these roles, and at the very least, people that do want to fill these roles?
Sure. Yeah, no, the last year has definitely been a year of learning, I think, for many of us who are in these roles of trying to hire people. And there's been, a lot of change, I think, across the board with expectations on both sides of the table. And there's been a lot of, specifically in the roles that we fill, there's been a lot of early retirements. And so that's, so we've done a lot of succession hiring and succession placements. But I think it's also just the navigating those changing expectations. A couple of years ago, you really wouldn't need to worry about whether workers would go into an office. And now, on our first phone calls, we have to ask the candidates, are you, this is we have to discuss whether it's an in-person, a hybrid, or a fully remote role. And those, depending on what it is, you can eliminate a large group of candidates based on, especially if it's fully in person with certain levels of candidates, that makes it more challenging. We also have to cover, vaccine policies and different things that are really new for 2021. These are not things that we had to worry about in an interview process prior to 2021. So just helping to just work through some of those topics with our clients.
So as companies have been navigating their troubles hiring over the last several months, in terms of their approach, have they had to change their approach from trying to find that perfect candidate to finding whoever they can in some way or another to fill those roles, or some sort of balance in between, maybe even hiring someone into a position like that on a temporary or a contract basis, hoping that things change down the line and they'll be able to eventually get that perfect candidate in their long term? Or have they been more focused on just filling the position, and if they need to bring this candidate along a little further to be at their ideal proficiency for that position, that's something that they've been more adaptable in terms of how they are, how willing they are to bring someone in that maybe isn't fully the greatest candidate or entirely ready for that position at that time?
Yeah, so with the positions that we're filling, being mostly, leadership roles, we're not finding we're able to bring, fully qualified candidates and candidates that are, we'll keep working at it until everybody feels there's a good fit. We're not finding a lot of interest in, I guess, what quote unquote settling for the positions that we're hiring for. But I certainly think that companies have had to maybe adjust their expectations for different levels of hiring, and, really, figuring out what are the minimum skill sets that we need for this role, and maybe, working towards hiring at that level versus, again, to your point, the ideal candidate across the board. So, I think it would absolutely vary depending on the level of position the company is trying to hire for, in terms of whether they would adjust their expectations. The other challenge that many companies are facing is the rising wages. And, certainly we've seen some rising wages even in the mid-level and senior level positions we're filling. And so then it's up to us to kind of advise and work with our clients on, hey, these are the candidates that we're finding in the salary range. If you really want to get, your list of 10 or 15 requirements, we're going to maybe have to adjust the salary range for the role. And so we'll have those types of conversations. But I know that even at, earlier career positions or other labor type roles, I know that a lot of our clients are facing rising wages, and so they're having to adjust their expectations based on that.
We're joined by Carrie Schochet. She is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, with us today on the MegaCast. And Carrie, there are a lot of factors that have gone into the worker shortages, so to speak, and have gone into what's being called the Great Resignation of 2021. Being someone that is in some ways an intermediary position between companies that are looking to hire candidates, or companies that are losing employees, and those employees that are looking for these jobs or are leaving these jobs, what are some of your opinions on the causes of this quote unquote Great Resignation in 2021, and how has your company been advising other businesses to navigate this landscape that they're in right now to prevent people from wanting to leave their company and instead enticing them to want to stay long term?
Sure. Yeah, so it was interesting. I heard a statement or a quote from in another interview recently where they said that the Great Resignation is not a trend, it's a movement. And so I think that, what's led to the Great Resignation is really a lot of the workforce rethinking their priorities and thinking about what's important and adjusting those priorities, in terms of work-life balance and some other things. So, there have been early retirements. There have been people that are just making entire career changes. There's just a lot of factors that go into it. On the other side of that, though, the retention piece, I think, really having open dialogue with the employees, discussing career paths. So that's one thing that's really big with, especially I would say early to mid-career employees, is they really, they want to know, where they're heading with the company. And so having those active discussions on career opportunities and career paths, learning and training, providing those opportunities within the company to continue to develop those employees and grow their skill sets. There's also a trend where employees want to feel that they're part of more of a mission-based business. There's something deeper. It's not just about profits. It's about, there's some other component of their job or their company that's providing value to the community. And so tying whatever it is that the company does to some bigger mission, I think has been an important piece of kind of what's important to people at this time. And just as one example, even if you're we've got a client who is a packaging company, but they use a lot of green processes and recycled materials. And so, while they're a manufacturer and they're a packager, their mission is to, really it's a green and an environmentally conscious type of product that they have. And so, trying to find candidates that would be attracted to that mission is big as well. So those are just a few of the things, and then I think just really listening to the employees and providing them an opportunity to share, what's important to them.
So considering those factors, Carrie, what do you believe continues to be some of the reasons why, even in the case of companies that are providing some of those resources or are shifting their vision going forward and doing so to attract some of these employees that have not returned to the workforce, what do you believe are some of the contributing factors still to this day why we still are in a quote-unquote worker shortage, for lack of better terms?
Yeah, so some of that is hard to really understand. I recently did another interview, and it was kind of, where are all the workers? And so I think there's still a question as to, why we have such a worker shortage. I think some of the resignation and quitting trends, though, are tied to another big thing, which is burnout. And so I think there's, because of some of these shortages and open positions, that creates pressure and additional workload on the employees that are there at the business. And so I think the burnout issue is one to watch, and kind of, again, be aware of, and figuring out ways to reduce burnout is very important on the retention side. But in terms of, the worker shortage, I think there's a few things that have gone into that. It's, again, the early retirements. I think there's some dual income families that potentially decided, to go to single income and have one of the family members, stay at home, with the kids, or something along those lines. I think the gig workers, that's been a big one, where there's, a lot of millennial talent. They're choosing to have more control over their destiny and their day through taking on special projects and things through the various sites that you can find that work. So those are just a few things that I think are contributing to that shortage.
So with that willingness to hold short of accepting a job or even accepting an interview for so many of those that are out of the workforce right now, how has that changed the dynamic in your role, in your company's role, helping as a recruiter and as and helping these companies in their hiring process? How's that changed your role or your approach to negotiating with these or finding these qualified candidates for these jobs?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot more, the candidates candidates are being bombarded, or potential employees or potential candidates are being bombarded, I think, with recruitment attempts. And so, we've continued to look at, how are we messaging? How are we positioning our clients' opportunities? We're looking at other creative strategies to reach the candidates and make our, opportunities stand out. And as one example, we've started filming, videos that are 60 seconds or under, and sending those videos to the candidate as opposed to just a written message, and saying, really describing the opportunity via video, because there's a lot of people, video is the way to reach, certain demographics of talent. And so we're trying different strategies just to stand out. And really it takes a lot of, like, what I would call pinpoint recruiting. You can't post an ad and expect that you're going to get applicants at all, or even, more specifically the qualified applicants that you're seeking. And so it really does take that more proactive approach.
We're joined by Carrie Schochet. She is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, joining us on the MegaCast. And so, Carrie, looking forward to 2022, what are the job market prospects looking like in that year? And as of now, what projections are there maybe for how the current dynamic in the job market may change or may fluctuate as we head into the new year?
It's so hard to say what's going to happen. I mean, we're expecting a very strong Q1. We've received probably more new search inquiries over the last couple of weeks than would be the norm at this time of year. Sometimes there's a cyclicality to recruiting, and we have not seen that cyclicality in 2021. We've seen an ongoing high level of demand for our services, and so I expect January to be very busy. I don't expect a significant change in some of these trends, at least in Q1, just with what we're seeing. It's just so hard to say, though. There's factors that are like more macroeconomic type factors that could impact the job market, but I just don't see anything specific that's going to change these trends at the moment.
And in terms of specific industries or specific jobs, what are some job openings or particular industries that are trending upwards in terms of available positions, or at least a position, or even positions that are filling up quickly if people are looking to get into a new job?
Yeah, so kind of in line with some of the challenges in the overall kind of business community. So we've seen an uptick in HR searches. There's, because of these labor challenges and challenges with talent, management and those types of issues, we've seen an increase in strategic HR positions. So that's been a big one. We continue to see a lot of demand for strong financial professionals and financial leadership, so controller and CFOs. But that's been an area that's been, hot for us. I would say across the board, though, public accounting talent. So, ranging from staff to manager level positions within public accounting on both tax and audit. Across the board, there's intense competition for that talent. So, there's a lot of demand for supply chain talent with some of those challenges that companies are experiencing in the supply chain side. So those are just a few things that we're seeing.
Well, Carrie, we appreciate your time. Another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. Anything else that we haven't discussed today you'd like to talk about, or anything that would be important for our audience to keep in consideration as they're looking into the job market, either for their own business to hire some employees, or if they're an employee, a worker out there in the workforce that's looking to rejoin a new company?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess a couple of things I would point out. If somebody listening is on the hiring side of the table, I think there's a huge opportunity with bringing formerly working parents back into the workplace, working parents back or stay-at-home parents back into the workplace. And so I think there's a lot of talent out there that would come back into the workplace if the right situation or flexibility was offered to them. And so I think that's an option to consider. So for example, providing that person an opportunity to maybe have a more flexible schedule so that they can do pickups and drop-offs with their kids. That's just one tip on a way to potentially attract some great talent. And run a great process on the hiring side. So make it smooth, keep your steps consistent across the board, but keep things moving and maintain that momentum. And when you have a great candidate, I would say come in strong with the first offer. On the candidate side, a couple of tips would be you can really stand out right now if you have the right message for a potential opportunity. So if you're looking to make a career change, I would recommend having a short cover letter or reaching out to somebody at the company and explaining to them how you think your current skill set will transition well into this new role. And I would say, as always, write a thank you email and send that promptly when you complete an interview, because that demonstration of interest and that follow-up is very important and can make you stand out as a top candidate. So those are just a couple tips that come to mind.
Carrie, thank you very much for joining us and giving us some insight into the job market as we put an end to 2021. Look forward to 2022.
Thank you so much for having me.